back, everybody. Happy New Year. Today is a couple days after the New Year. Thank you all for taking some time to be here. Um, it's a new year. Going to be another good year. Spent some time over the holidays with a really good friend of mine from New Jersey. Another jazz aficionado came out, listened to a lot of music, bought some new music. We'll talk about. But thank you all for being here. It's really an honor to have you here. Couple things, we all do New Year's resolutions. So a couple things I'm going to try to do differently this year. Um, some ideas, one of which came from a listener, a very, very good idea. So we're obviously going to talk about music and talk about jazz and both forms, vinyl and digital. I do own a lot of CDs. Um, I enjoy vinyl a lot more, but there are some things on CD that you can't find on vinyl. So we'll talk about those as well. Um, but I'm going to try to do a couple things differently. I'm going to obviously do what we've done, but maybe every other addition here to the channel, I'm going to try to talk about maybe a book that I'm reading or something of note that has to do with the music. Um, there's a lot of great stuff that you can learn on YouTube by watching some of the other talented people here that are bringing the information and stuff to all of us that I learned from. Um, but there's a lot of stuff in books that we just don't have the time to talk about. I like to read about some of the backgrounds to some of the records and some of the musicians, and I'm still learning. So we'll talk about that, and then one of my listeners, sent me a note suggesting to talk about some people who are currently playing great, and there's a lot of great young players and not so young players that are still playing. That we tend to pay attention to some of the older players, the Coltrane's and the Gillespies, Clifford, those guys. But there's so many other good players playing now that I'm going to try to talk about one at least maybe every video, if not every other video. Um, Shame on me for not doing that before. And thank you. I can't remember the name who sent me that note, but point well taken, and I'm going to try to do that. So anyhow, thank you all for being back, and a couple new additions and a couple things I found in the last couple of weeks that I'd like to talk to you about. First of all, I finally got the latest addition to the contemporary reissue series that began last year. This one is the Benny Carter Jazz Giant. Where else can you find a lineup of Benny Carter, who plays alto and trumpet on this record, believe it or not? Ben Webster on tenor, Frank Rossellino, great Frank Rossellino on trombone, Jimmy Rolls or Andre Previn on piano, Bonnie Kessel on guitar, and Leroy Vinegar, Shirley Mann on bass and drums, respectively. Andre Previn. Someday I'm going to do a little thing on Andre Previn. Andre Previn was a really good pianist. He's also, I've got over here in my classical area great recordings, some symphonic recordings conducted by Andre Previn. Just a really great musician. But this record is it's amazing. The lineup, it's an all-star lineup. Great tunes. My favorite tune on here is a Walking Thing. Old Fashioned Love is great. Ain't She Sweet? Kessel plays great on that. But Benny Carter, what a full-bodied, soulful player who influenced a lot of people, and came from guys like Ben Webster and Lester Young, and perhaps some other players prior, obviously. But to have Benny Carter and Ben Webster on a record that sounds as good as this record, and thanks to QRP and to Bernie Grundman who did the remaster on this, just great sounding record, reasonably priced. It's not a gatefold, but it's just a nice Great jacket, very heavy, clean, quiet vinyl, as are all the other contemporaries. I think we have 2 or 3 more coming, some soon, in this series. Great stuff. I'm going to try to send a note to either to Chad Kasem or I have some other ideas. Boy, there's some other contemporary stuff I'd love to see. I think I mentioned it in the last video. I'd love to see that Shelly Man at the Blackhawk reissued in a box set. That'd be great. Anyhow, not to be repetitive. Another really cool record that I found in the last couple weeks is one I used to have long time ago that I don't know where it is now. It's called Thunderbird by Louis Belson, and it's on the Impulse label. And I found a really clean copy on an original Impulse, clean Impulse record. I'll hold this up for you. I love that old label, the orange and black Impulse label. But we've got Louis Belson on here under his name. Thunderbird is the name of the record. Harry Edison plays trumpet on here. And what a again, Harry's maybe in my top 3, not maybe, in my top 3. I'm going to do a video on my top trumpet players here coming up the next 2 or 3 videos. But Thunderbird on Impulse. Sam Most is on here. Sam Most is the brother of Abe Most. Again, another replay. But Sam, I had not heard really play before in any kind of a meaningful recording. He plays great on here. And of course, Carl Fontana. He and Rossellino and JJ, my 3 favorite trombone players, and so many good trombone players. Curtis Fuller, and even some of the there's just so many good players. But I love Carl Fontana's playing. There's a recording with Carl Fontana and Rossellino together. You can find it on YouTube. It's great. 2 great, tasty players. This is a great record, Thunderbird, on Impulse. I believe it's 9107, A9107, in stereo. The original Impulse. Very clean copy I found on Discogs. Thunderbird, Louis Belson. You know, Belson, unlike a Buddy Rich or Krupa, who were mainly big band drummers, Belson is a great big band drummer, but also can play very tasty in small groups. I heard Buddy in a small group in New York. I think Sonny Fortune was the reed player, and Buddy had a club for a while in New York, and I went, and Buddy, he's a machine, great drummer. But in a small group, I didn't care for it. But Louis Belson did some great recordings, of course, on Pablo with Oscar and some of those small bands on Pablo, and under his own name on Pablo. This is kind of a Pablo-sounding record, but it's on Impulse. If you can find it, pick it up. Louis Belson, Thunderbird. Another record that came yesterday, I listened to last night. I found a very clean copy from a gentleman in Northern California. I bought on Discogs. It came yesterday. The Essential Dizzy Gillespie. Now, this is a compilation of really well-known Dizzy oriented tunes. Night in Tunisia, Burke's Works, The Champ, Jessica's Day. These are pieces that Dizzy made famous, and some others. But there's some small groups here with Stan Getz, Zoot Sims, I think Ray Brown. I forget who the piano player might be. Oscar. And then there's some big band, a couple big band tracks from other Verve records. Excuse me, with Phil Woods is on it, Lee Morgan's on it, on that big band. Some great players. But this is a Verve that it's really, really, really clean. How clean that is for a deep groove Verve from back in the day. The Essential Dizzy Gillespie. And of course, Dizzy's just Dizzy's Dizzy. Nothing else to say. Dizzy is a great innovator and great player. Let's see what else is here. I have to put a Pablo in. This I listened to last night as well. And this is a Pablo recording by Count Basie called For the Second Time. I guess it's the second recording with this group. And it's a trio with Ray Brown on bass and, of course, Louis Belson on drums. Again, Louis Belson in a small group. Playing great. A very, very clean Pablo. I think maybe it's because I just listened to it last night, but this is one of the greatest sounding Pablos I think there are. And it's hard to say. There's so many good ones. But this sounded great. Great recording on the original Pablo. Very clean recording that came in recently to add to the Pablo collection. But again, Louis Belson on drums, and a good recording done in 1975. Produced by Norma Grants. Some great tunes on Sunny Side of the Street, Sandman, a couple blues. Just a great record. You can find this one. I would really be looking for that. I got a request from one of my listeners to feature some big band music. And, we've talked about Basie a lot. We've talked about Mel Lewis, Star Jones a lot. We've talked about Ellington a lot. There's a couple other big bands that have been around that I'm going to try to talk about a little bit. One of which is one of my favorite records in my entire collection. If I had to keep 10 records, this would be in my top 10. Not a very well-known record. Why, I don't know. But Oliver Nelson, of course, we know Oliver for Blues and the Abstract Truth and some of the other things that Oliver did. Great writer for TV and movie. But this is a record on Impulse that I found. I had heard on the radio when I was in New York, and I bought it. Called the Oliver Nelson Big Band Live in Los Angeles. And I have to tell you, I don't know if you can stream this or you can find it on YouTube, but check it out because it is a great, great sounding record. And some great players on here. I believe this is Tom Scott's first recording as a soloist. I think Frank Trezeri's on this, Jack Nimitz, Bill Perkins, Gabe Baltazar of the Kenton band, Buddy Childers, great player, Bobby Bryant out of Chicago, great player, Freddie Hill, Connie Condoli. I mean, come on. You should hear the trumpet section on here. They do a tune down by the riverside where they take turns for about 4 or 5 chorus trumpet solos on here. But Monty Budwig on bass, Mel Brown on guitar, and Thigpen on drums, and arranged and conducted by Oliver Nelson live in Los Angeles. Milestones, it's a great alto sax duo between Tom Scott and I believe Frank Strozier, on this. I think I pronounced his name wrong before, but it's Frank Strozier. I remember Bird, Miss Fine. Miss Fine's a kind of a Quincy Jones sounding swinging tune that Oliver wrote. But Oliver Nelson Big Band. This is a great big band record. 5 stars on this. Great recording too, by the way. Really, really good recording. Pick that up. Okay, so new players. I saw a YouTube video that I'd heard this player, Sherman Irby, alto player. I'd heard him on the radio with in the past on some recordings, and I didn't know who it was. I said, "Who is that?" And then they said it was Sherman Irby. I said, "Boy, I'd really not heard of him. This is probably 10 years ago or so." So I started to investigate him, and it reminded me. I saw a YouTube video of him playing with the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, Wynton Marsalis's orchestra, who he works with, and I heard a solo he played, very soulful blues solo. He's got a great sound. So I picked up a couple of his CDs. They're now out on vinyl. But we've got the Sherman Irby Quartet. This is a live recording at the Otto Club. This is in Milan, using an Italian rhythm section. They play well. And Irby plays great on this. The recording's not great. It's a live recording. I don't know who did the recording in Italy. It's good. It's not a great recording, but he plays great on this. What a great player! A lot of Cannonball, Adderley influence I hear, and also that kind of that fat sound that some of the alto players from that Texas sound, really full sound, but a very soulful player. And I looked into what he's doing, and he's doing a lot of teaching. God bless him for doing that, working with youngsters and playing in and around New York and elsewhere. Very busy guy, and it was great to discover more of his playing. I picked up another CD called Big Mama's Biscuits. And this is a much better recording. He owns the record company called BWR Records, and this is done on BWR. I don't know if this one is, but Big Mama's Biscuits, Sherman Irby. Investigate this young man. I believe he's about 50 by now, but what a great player, and shame on me for not knowing about him earlier. And thank you to the gentleman who passed on a comment about looking to people who are working now. This is one of them. Sherman Irby. What a great player. I'm glad that I investigated more of him. Books. I pulled out a book the other night. My profession, along with music, of course, but in the last 20 years has been photography. If you go to jackgrahamphoto.com, you'll see what I do. But I've always appreciated great photography, and this book, it's a book about the Blue Note years. It's the photography of Francis Wolff. Was a great photographer, great people photographer. He captured the overall. It's hard to hold up. It's a heavy book. The overall feeling of the sessions that were recorded by Rudy Van Gelder for Blue Note and some other things, but the looks and the feelings of the musicians. What a great book. It's a large coffee table book. It's a heavy book. I think you can still find probably a copy of this around. I don't know if it's still published, but it's a compilation again of the musicians that were on Blue Note, and it's categorized by years. 10 years, 10 years, 10 years, 10 years. Just a great book. And and there's a lot of information in here about the recordings. There's a lot of written information, a lot of just great stories, fun things to know about, and a great book. If you can find this, I think maybe on eBay or somewhere you can find a copy of this. Francis Wolff, The Blue Note Years. Great book. Well, anyhow, that's about it for today. Thank you all for being here. Again, if you like what you saw, like, subscribe, etc. And until next time, keep listening, keep enjoying. We'll talk to you soon.